Grant, we beseech thee, that meditating on these mysteries of the most holy Rosary of Blessed Virgin Mary, we may imitate what they contain and obtain what they promise, through the same Christ our Lord. Amen.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
The praying of the Rosary is made possible by the E.J. and Marjorie B. Orso Family Foundation and the Francis family, and by the Daily Mass and Rosary are also made possible by support in loving memory of the Crusto, Jupiter, Saulney, Prevost, and Wilson families, Gloria Saulney Curtis, Honora Flory Curry, Michael Anthony Graham II, Ernest J. Gaines, Maria Smith Williams, May Jupiter, Ramona Jupiter, Sister Greta Jupiter, and Lynn Pacho Garnett. You're watching WLAE, New Orleans Public Television.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villery's Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villery's provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villery's Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Dave Miette Insurance Agency. Auto, home, flood, business, 504-556-0809. Dave Miette, INSagency.com.
For over 48 years, Southern Tires and Auto Repair has provided services across the New Orleans metro area. Southern Tires offers a range of tires for all vehicles and ATVs. We also have a full suite of auto repair options, including brake repair, rim repair, custom exhaust, steering and suspension, tire siping, and so much more. Southern Tires and Auto Repair, 2550 Hickory Avenue in Metairie.
C&C Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, C&C provides patient-centered care for your entire family. C&C Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I am your host, Eric Asher. Hope you had a fantastic Christmas as now we go into, again, the new year, and here comes 2024. Got a great show for you tonight, something I've been wanting to do for a while. A legend in our business, a legend in New Orleans sports media. Ken Berthelot is with us on the program today. Ken, welcome to the show. I can't tell you how excited I am for you to come down and be part of our program today. Again, I'm a guy that, again, has been a huge fan of yours my entire life. It seems like watching sports in this town. You've done so much. You've seen so much. You've been involved in so much. And thank you for giving us a few minutes of your time here after Christmas.
Well, it's my pleasure to be on this show. I feel like I'm sitting with a legend, too, because I've got to tell you that I've watched your show. This is a really good show, and I enjoy it. And I think there's something special with anybody in sports journalism that if you can read their story or watch their show and you come out of that read or that watch and you've learned something that you didn't know before, that's very special. And I always get that from your show. So thank you very much.
No, thank you. I mean, that is so gratifying. I mean, coming from you, again, a legend in this town. Ken, let's start off. Give people a little bit about your background. How many years were you in the media here in New Orleans, or just in the media period? Because not just in New Orleans, right?
Right. Well, I started in 1972. Born and raised here in the Ninth Ward, Arabi, and grew up right down the street from the Lamarcks.
Okay.
So they were on the good side of the tracks. I was on the other side of the tracks. Went to Holy Cross, and then from there, Louisiana Tech University. And I was at Tech the same time Phil Duck Dynasty was leaving, and Terry Bradshaw was coming in. And I'd like to tell you, I knew Terry back then, but only in passing as a regular student would know him. And I got to spend those years. When I graduated from Louisiana Tech, did a little bit of graduate school. Then it's so funny, I got out, and there was I didn't want to be in pre-med, which is what I got my degree in. And I said, this is not for me. I really want to be a sportscaster. And a guy named Tom Brent had a school in New Orleans that was called the Columbia School of Broadcasting. It was a franchise. Right down by the courthouse on Broad Street. And we had 9 people in the first class. I signed up, and we all got up to introduce ourselves, and he did this. He said, he looked like this, and he said, I have never heard such absolute disdain for the Queen's English in all of my life. He said, I promise you guys one thing, just off hearing you introduce yourselves, if you stay with me for 6 months, I'll get you a job, some minimum wage job in some little bitty podunk town in Louisiana, and you'll start your career. We all stayed with him, and we all got jobs at little bitty town. My first one was KTIB Thibodaux, working the 6 to midnight shift, and I told the general manager, I asked him, I said, I'd like to do all the sports that I can do. He said, you can do as much sports as you want. You won't get paid for it, but you can do as much as you want. So I started broadcasting Nichols games, baseball games with Ray Didier. That's when I started in baseball season. And from there, moved to Alexandria, Louisiana, KALB Television, following Greg Fox, if you remember Greg Fox. He was there, got the job at Channel 6. When he got the job at Channel 6, I got in his position at KALB, and stayed there until 1978. Buddy Diliberto and I had developed a relationship because we covered a lot of games together. And when Mel Levitt left, he was really the public affairs guy, but he also filled in on weekend sports. And when he left Channel 8, I realized he left to give Alec and Buddy a call. They said, send me a tape, sent him a tape, and started there, and was there in 1978, and my whole career has been here in New Orleans. So it's been a lot of fun.
So Channel 8 from 8 to where?
Channel 8, well, I went from Channel 8 to Tulane in 1985. So I was hosting at Channel 8 the coaches shows. And quick little story on this. The very first show I'm doing, the Mac Brown show, we had done the preseason show, I'm doing the first show, and after, that was the 110 season with Mac Brown, year 1. We got waxed by Mississippi State. And after the show, he gets up and he puts his arm around me, we walk a little bit, he says, you know, Ken, I don't know if I just watched the Mac Brown show or the Mississippi State highlight show. I said, oops. I said, I probably put that together like a sportscaster and not like a coach's show, right? And he winked at me and he said, I said, I'll get it right, Coach. I'll get it right. That week, they called me and said, if we opened up a position for you, would you want to come to Tulane? And I said, I would love to do that, but what would it be? You already have a good voice. Don Crockett was an excellent voice. And they said, Mac was a little bit ahead of his time. He said, I want television. I want television broadcast of our games if we can get them. And I want my show, my coach's show, to go nationally. This is 1985. You don't have a lot of coaches' shows airing nationally. And somehow I got it, 7 o'clock. I can't even remember the network. Nationwide, Tuesday night, 7 p.m. our time, Central Time. And I said, Mac, it's going to cost a little bit. He said, give me the number. I gave him the number, and he said, I'm going to raise it. We're going to raise it. And I helped him raise it, and we went and got it. Went and got it. So it was an amazing story. Stayed at Tulane until 2001. There was some things going on just with illness and things that I had to get, not for myself, but I had to get out of it. I couldn't travel. 2001, Katrina brought me back into the business. And my good friend Rob Bernardi was the athletics director at Nichols. He said, I lost my fundraiser, who was also my play-by-play guy. Would you want to get back into business? And I said, yeah, because I was full-time Dale Carnegie at that time. And there were no training budgets after Katrina. There were no businesses anymore. So I went with him and stayed there until about 2011. And then a local this is interesting, a local television station, Channel 20, still in existence here in New Orleans, a Christian station, was the LaCie Broadcasting Corporation. Lester Sumrall Evangelistic Association, which we're trying to find out now with John Sumrall if there is a relation. He thinks there is a distant relation because most of Lester's family came from Mississippi and Alabama, and John is an Huntsville, Alabama native. So it's interesting there. And then I stayed there until just with them for a long time, and then eventually worked my way in retirement. So look, at 75 years old, I still feel like I just want to stay involved, and I love it. I hate to give it up. So I stay closely involved with Tulane and with the high schools. And Tulane will call me sometimes to fill in, just to help out. And I'm still on. When you get my age, everybody wants you on their Hall of Fame committee. So I'm on 5 Hall of Fame committees, and I still enjoy the heck out of it.
In your career, what did you enjoy the most? Did you enjoy play-by-play? Did you enjoy doing television? When you look back on your career, what's the thing that really got you excited that you love doing?
When I started, I got in this to be a play-by-play broadcaster.
Okay.
And that's what I really like to do. In high school, I would sit in Araby on Acock Street. I would sit in the backyard and tune in KMOX 50,000 watt station out of St. Louis and listen to Harry Carey and Jack Buck broadcast St. Louis Cardinal games. A lot of people, was Harry Carey a Cardinal broadcast? Yes. Before he made the move to the Cubs, he was. And that made me want to be a sportscaster. My dad had taken me to some Pelican baseball games. I actually had a baseball signed, a foul ball we caught, signed by Mel Parnell, who was managing the team at that time. Lost that in Katrina, lost everything in Katrina. But some of those memories were hard to not be able to find. But so to be a play-by-play guy was really important. But in the process, the other thing that I've really fallen in love with is putting together stories, documentaries, stories. I love doing the Hall of Fame videos for the Greater New Orleans, Allstate Sugar Bowl, Greater New Orleans Sports Hall of Fame, and other Hall of Fame groups, where you can really tell a story about somebody and have that there for posterity. You do a lot of. You've done a lot of documentaries, right? You've done. Yes.
Talk some of them.
Well, most of the documentaries have been small documentaries. The documentaries that, I was involved with Glory Days right here on WLAE Channel 32. Oh, love that. Love the fact that we could, and to make sure that we got all the right people involved. So you had the Lenny Van Gilders and the Kenny Trahans and the Ed Daniels, and you made sure that they got involved and they could tell their stories about it. I think we had some Tommy Chrysan and some other people on there also, which was very special. But the little short ones, sometimes one that's 3 to 5 minutes long that you can show on that screen at the Hall of Fame event, whether it's good, bad, some of them just are not coming to mind right now, but it's just the fun of putting that together and then being able to give it to a family who has a family member in the Hall of Fame and say, this is yours to keep forever, show it to the grandkids. That's a lot of fun.
Ken, influences or mentors in your career?
LSU's original or longtime voice, John Ferguson. The voice of the Tigers. He was, like me, a Louisiana Tech graduate. And I didn't realize that. We were both Louisiana Tech graduates, and it formed a little bit of a bind. And I asked him if he would help me in this business get started. I admired his work so much. And he would call me about 2 times a month, and he would nitpick to death, and that's exactly what I wanted him to do. I remember one time when he first started, he said, Ken, the player cannot be running left, the quarterback cannot be running left and then he throws left. Keep that syntax exact. He runs left and throws left, or he's running left and throwing left. But he said, I like the S sounds a whole lot better. It's a lot more concise. And he taught me a lot of little things like that. And when he retired, he called me to Baton Rouge and he said, I want you to have all of my play-by-play sheets. And he said, I want you to have the empties. I want you to have some of the ones that I'm not going to need anymore for your posterity. And they were purple, gold, and white. The white was always the other team. The purple was the defense, and the gold was the offense. And he had his little boxes and his little squares set up for a 4-4, 5, whatever 5-2. He had them all set up, and I had all that, and I lost it in Katrina. So you talk about disappointing. To have lost that in Katrina was a crusher.
Yes, it is.
But he was my biggest. And then when I got here, Buddy Diliberto.
Talk about the days with Buddy.
Oh, the days with Buddy was so good. I had gotten to know Buddy because even though I was in Alexandria, I would drive to everything LSU had. And if LSU didn't have a game, anything in every Saints game, Tulane games if LSU wasn't playing, because Alexandria was more of an LSU market because of where they were. And so Buddy got to know me. And when Mel Levitt left, I called Buddy and I said, I want this job. You know me. You know I know the area. You know the work because I send you some of the interviews and stuff to run. I said, it's going to take you 3 hours to train me. Take 3 hours before one show. I learned the Channel 8 way, and I'm in. He said, send me a tape. So I did, and he trusted me. And he trusted me to do a lot, and I really appreciate that. And at one point, he came to me and he said, you're brand new. He says, let me ask you something. He says, I don't want to take Sunday nights after Saints games away from you. He said, he says, do you want to do that? He says, that's the biggest show of the week.
Right.
And I said, Buddy, you are Buddy Diliberto. You are the legend. You are the icon. I'm a new guy coming into the market. And even though I'm from New Orleans, everybody knows you. I said, I can be a part of that show, but I think you need during football season, at least to start these first year or two, you need to anchor that show. And he did. And he just took me under his wing and just showed me this is how you do this. This is why it's important to have this on the air. This is why it's important to put the morning lines on the air.
Right.
Back then it wasn't like it is now.
Right.
And I'll tell you a quick story. You're gonna
Sure,
love.
please.
5 o'clock, well, at that time we only had a 6 and 10 at Channel 8. And a guy calls up, and it's 5:45, and I'm typing everything up, and I go type them on the Chiron because at that time you put everything in yourself on those things. So a guy calls up, and Buddy's listening. Buddy's typing some last-minute script stuff, and he's listening. I'm saying, oh yeah, Buddy, Buddy said, take the Saints and spot the 4, whatever it is. So man, as soon as I hung up, Buddy says, man, don't ever do that again. And I said, why? Because I didn't know.
Right.
And he goes, well. He says some of the local bookies at that time, everything wasn't in the open.
Sure.
He says they'll watch that, and if they know before we go on the air, they'll actually adjust their lines, and it makes a difference with the money coming in and going out. And I didn't totally understand that part of it at that time, but I said, you got it.
Right.
So sometimes it was little things like that, but mostly it was just how to cover things. And what he taught me mostly was you don't answer to the teams. Don't worry about whether a coach likes you or doesn't like you. Your family is the audience. You owe it. If you've got to give a commentary or you've got to say something, say the truth, be fair, but speak the truth, but you speak it because the audience is the one that cares. So if you say something anti or it was against Tulane or LSU or the Saints, if it's a fair execution of the commentary, don't be afraid to give it because you owe it to the fan base. You owe it to the audience watching you to be fair. Because if you don't say it, who else? If in other words, he was telling us, if print and broadcast don't do it, who's going to be? How are they going to know?
It is the truth, no doubt. Ken Berthelot with us. Ken, a lot of folks know this. Some folks don't know this. You had the first interview with Cooper and Peyton Manning, and I remember it like it was yesterday. You see it on NFL films now all the time. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, the first one was with Alexandria. I was in Alexandria, Louisiana, and I've got to do both locker rooms. So I'm trying to catch the Saints, go back and catch the visitors, and come back and see if there's any stragglers coming out of the locker room. And at that time, Archie would have the kids in his arms. So I do an interview with Archie, and before we started, I said, do you mind if I ask Cooper a question? And he said, no, absolutely. And he says, ask him who his favorite quarterback is. So if you saw it, baby talk, Cooper, who's your favorite quarterback? And I think he's going to say, Archie Manning or my dad or something. Roger Staubach. Boom, it's that one. And 2 years later, he's got Peyton in his hands, and he's asking the same question. So I did, and he told me, ask him the same question. I think you're going to get a different answer. And he turns around and looks and goes, my dad. And it's really cute. And Archie called me one time and he said, do you have that? I'm looking for that. I said, I have a copy, but I only have one copy. At that time, it wasn't easy to copy tapes. So I gave it to him, and he called me a couple of years later. He said, ESPN's looking for that. I said, Archie, it's got to be at your house. Please tell me it's at your house, because if not, we lost it forever, and I'm going to die. And ESPN, he gave ESPN access to his attic, they went in there and they did find it in the attic, and that's why you see it on TV today.
Right.
At the Manning Passing Academy this year, he actually had Cooper on one side and Peyton on the other. He says, "Hey, you want to do the interview again? I think they'll get it right this time." I looked at, Lenny had the camera, I couldn't find Lenny. And
right.
I said, "Okay, we got to wait till next year."
That's amazing. Talk about the beginnings of the Saints and what this town was like when that franchise was awarded to New Orleans.
Yeah, I mean, we're going back to 67 and 68. And I'm just out of high school,
Right.
going to Louisiana Tech at that time, graduated from Holy Cross, and the excitement was unbelievable. And I can remember at that time, get a date, go to the game, somehow you get your tickets, and parking. Finding parking around Tulane Stadium was never easy. And I can remember parking as far away as Lower Line and Zimple. It still rings in my mind today. And then you'd walk a mile or two to the stadium and get in there and watch it, and you had to be part of it, and it was so much fun. But it changed what New Orleans was.
Right.
It changed what other people thought about this. We became a big league city, and it's never gone back to anything. Thank God we didn't lose them after Katrina, because it was close.
It was.
But it was close, and because no one was sure if this city was going to come back and be able to support a team.
Right.
So, but thank God Mr. Benson stuck with New Orleans, and we kept the team and added an NBA team too.
When you look at those early years and how difficult it was for the teams, because again of management, ownership, etc. Talk about the. I really want to talk about the Archie Manning years and what he did coming over from Ole Miss, because he seemed to, again, look, this was a Saints crazed town, but they seemed to take it to another level when Archie was drafted.
Archie, I like to say, and you don't have to agree with this, sort of legitimized the NFL, the professionalism of it, the stardom of it, that we had a star now that could come to New Orleans and be here and want to be here. Want to be here. I mean, just fell in love with the city, and you were getting somebody who was just such an excellent talent. Unfortunately, they just never built the team to give him the support and the protection that he needed. My joke used to be they should have given Archie Manning not only a Ring of Honor spot, but they should have given him a plaque of the top of the dome, because he spent most of his time on his rear end looking up. Bless his heart, And but if he could have only had the type of coaching that a Sean Payton had in that day.
Yes.
And I know that they tried. They definitely tried to put the people around him. The owner was a great owner. He probably too generous in that he paid too much money up front without letting some of the personnel and coaches go out and have to earn that, in my opinion. But Archie is still a part of this franchise and a face of this franchise that will never, ever change. Never.
I agree. And a lot of people, again, that maybe younger people don't realize, again, what he meant to that franchise when he came in, where the franchise was, what he did. Now, again, didn't win a lot.
Right.
But again, look, he gave his body to this organization, to the city. I mean, you can see it now today.
And a lot of people were upset when he left, and spent those few years somewhere else. But I was kind of hoping, thank you, Lord, let him go to a winner. Let him be able to. Yeah, and I know it didn't work.
Yeah, Houston
either,
and then Minnesota. And of course, I can remember it like it was yesterday. I was doing an internship at WLAE back then. Worked with Mary Foster Sports. I know you know Mary Foster from back in the day.
Loved it.
And we had the Archie Manning show. And a friend of mine called me that morning before I was going to work saying Archie's been traded. I thought he was joking. Yeah. And then when, of course, traded for Leon Gray, a broken down tackle, and of course, kind of changed the course of the Saints. Kenny Stabler kind of taken over during those Bum Phillips years. But again, he will be always remembered as again, really a true Saint.
Yeah, and look, to have played his pro ball here, growing up and being from Drew, Mississippi, and play his college ball at Ole Miss, I just think he's such a special example of what an athlete can do for a university, for a city, for a team, what he can bring to it when they're willing to stay and say, this is where my roots are. I'm going to be part of this.
The mid-'70s were so much fun here in New Orleans because we got an NBA expansion franchise, the Jazz. Pete Maravich comes over. I mean, to have Archie Manning and Pete Maravich as kind of the two faces of those two franchises were incredible for New Orleans back then.
Oh, you know, I'm so glad you brought up that. I almost forget about Pete Maravich and the Jazz, and my goodness, he was such fun to watch, and he was such a talent. And how when he was in college they couldn't go further with him. You know, I don't know, and actually I do know, because what almost everybody did, and Adolph Rupp talked about it at Kentucky. He said, look, I respect him for what he is. You can't stop him. You have to stop everybody else. So everybody else stays in single digits, and Maravich gets whatever he gets. Because if he gets 50 and everybody else is in single digits, we can get 80 and still beat him, even if it's by 3. And that's what a lot of people did to the LSU teams back then. But when he got into the pros, it's a different story. And again, he had some talent. It was fun to watch. And you know, at that time, in pro ball, you just want to see the fun. You want to see the entertainment.
Right.
And you want them to win. You want them to do well.
Right.
But when you got talent like that, you just enjoy it.
Right.
You know, I remember Rich Kelly with him. I mean, how big was that?
Right. And you got some stories about Rich Kelly, huh?
Yeah, Rich Kelly was that big, what, 6'10", 6'11", maybe, was he a 7-footer?
Yeah.
7-footer.
Out of Stanford?
Oh, man, he's coming down to do a slam dunk one time, and our photographer from Channel 8, we're working the game, I'm covering the game, and she's about 5'3", and she's about 5'3", and she's sitting under the basket, and she's watching him, and he's coming in, and he just slams it, and then he is coming to her, and all of a sudden you can hear the scream, and then kabow!
Right.
And it's fun watching it. It wasn't fun for her, but it was fun watching it when you go back and watch it. And, you know, you see the camera go all over the place, and he just ran her over, and they had to stop the game, and they're out there checking on her. Not the play, he's fine. He's looking at oh my God, you know.
Sure.
And he felt bad, but it's funny how some of those memories stay with you like that. But crazy days. But watching Pete Maravich and Kelly and the guys that were on that team was so very special.
It was a fun. It really was a fun time for the city. Again, when you talk about, you know, the Saints, even though they weren't winning, the Jazz weren't winning, but it was, you know, we were a big league town. We had 2 professional teams. Now again, we had the ABA with the Bucks at one point. Again, there was a short-lived here, but and it really started the shift from, again, collegiate sports to pro sports, because things have changed, right? I mean, when I was, I guess when I was really, really young, and I remember the sportscasts were boxing, the fairgrounds, as you mentioned, the morning line, and college.
That's it.
And college. It was really when you got into really in the 70s, late 60s, early 70s, when we started to see this kind of shift to more of a pro town. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, and I think that was important because Tulane, again, during those years in the 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s, late 60s, 70s, they got a little good in 70 to 73, and then again, it was just the losing years that came back, and you just didn't. I'm thinking over a 42-year period, that was only like 4 times or 5 times that Tulane had even gotten to 8 victories. Right. So LSU had up and down years at that time, mostly up, but it was just about all LSU and nothing but LSU at the time. So, but then we always had baseball. Right. And you always had good baseball here, even better when LSU got real good, and Tulane and UNO accepted that challenge, and they raised the level of their programs. But this is still a football town and basketball town, and baseball too. But I think it goes football, basketball, baseball.
People forget how about LSU and UNO, how good UNO was in basketball, and of course what Maestri did in baseball.
What Maestri did in baseball was you know, we could do a whole show just on Ron Maestri, and not only what he meant to UNO baseball, but what he meant to baseball in this city. You know, and then you can't even do that without bringing up Rag Sherman and Joe Sherman and how what they've done at Delgado to feed all 3 of these programs, including what Skip Bertman ended up doing at LSU. So those things are very, very special. But God, what Maestri did was just unbelievable. Yeah.
You know, I neglected to say another sport that was big was boxing in this town, right, at one time?
Boxing was so big in this town at one time. It's a guy who graduated from De La Salle.
Go ahead.
It's your school, right?
Yes.
And 1965, Bernard Fernandez.
Okay.
And Bernard learned boxing from his dad, who at first was a boxer, forgive me, his name's going to escape me right now. And Bernard, he taught Bernard the game. And Bernard became a sports writer. Graduated from De La Salle. Actually, we started our careers together in Houma, Thibodeau. He was the editor of the Houma Daily Courier when I was at KTIB in Thibodeau. And then when I went to Alexandria, he was in Jackson, Mississippi at the Clarion Ledger. And then when I came back to New Orleans, he moved to Philadelphia and retired just recently in Philadelphia as one of the top writers for the Philadelphia Inquirer, and just got inducted into his 4th Hall of Fame. This one being his 4th one was the biggest one, the International Boxing Hall of Fame, Bernard Fernandez de La Salle. And his dad taught him the game so well that he's inducted as a contributor and as a writer, because his writing was so superb on all of the boxing events. They sent him around the world. He is now publishing his 5th and last book, but his first 4 are out. He's done some signings in the Philadelphia area. Trying to get him to come do some signings down here. He says, well, I don't think anybody remembers me. I said, it's the books and the works. But I'll tell you, if you are interested in boxing and you want to recap the big and the little fights, but the fights that had significance in the sport, he's got every single one covered. He touches on the history in New Orleans. He touches on what it was like in the old days with Les Bonanno and people like that. He stayed in touch with Bonanno and Bob Arum. I mean, he would talk to those guys weekly and stay on top of things. So it was very special, but it all started right here, and he learned it in a boxing town.
Yeah, we had, well, you go back to, again, the origins of boxing in this country here in New Orleans. And then again, I'm looking at the dome behind you, one of the biggest fights ever, again, with Muhammad Ali and Leon Spinks.
Yes, yes. And all I remember was every time there was, and especially that fight, there was something real big that happened, we would get so many media who would come to Channel 8 after, and I think this was because of Buddy's newspaper connections from the old days, and they would say, before we write this, or before we do a follow-up story for the next day, let us take it to the monitors. We want to see the video, and they would go frame by frame on. I remember the No Mas fight. I mean, sometimes they went back. Yeah, they went back on that one, and they said, we want to see it. I mean, we had so many people from the Northeast in the newsroom that day, looking at frame by frame of that fight, wanting to check it out and just to see what was up before they had to write the story, that it was really amazing.
Yeah. We're a big horse racing town too, right?
Oh,
always have been.
goodness,
Fairgrounds, again, historic. When you talk about not just, again, some great horses that have been here, but breeding horses here in Louisiana. And of course, you covered that in your time in media as well.
Oh yeah, they had a Channel 8 day at the races in favor of Buddy. I think they had one before it because of Hap and their long-standing relationships with the Fairgrounds. I used to tease Buddy. I said, you know, Buddy, I said, I'm not sure if all of these races are legit. I would tease him like that all the time, and he says, well, I'll tell you what. He said, you take a camera, go out and do a feature. Go out there and ask the people out in the stands, ask the people who are going to the betting windows if they think it's legit or not. So I did. I said, I'm going to take you up on that challenge. So I'll go out, I'll do the feature, and I'd ask people, well, do you think that, you know, that maybe this race might be fixed or something? People were so good-natured about it. They go, you know, if it is, Ken, it's just another thing we have to take in account when we're handicapping it and betting it. He says, we got to figure all of that out. And then they'd go, no, it's not. It's legitimate. So we'd have some fun with it. But I would tease Buddy. I said, man, for as many jockeys as you know, you think in the press room here we could lean up against one of these poles or something going down and be able to hear what's going on. So if it is, we'd know who to bet. And he'd go, would you cut that out? They're straight, they're good. Otherwise the betting wouldn't happen because it would mess up the whole betting cycle. And I know, I'll just tease him on that. We had so many good days covering Fairgrounds that, and no real special stories, just the fun days of being in there. But I'll tell you that Buddy and Hab Glotty did so much for the fairgrounds that in the old fairground days, they had a reserved parking place under the press box area. So we would pull in, and I would go with Buddy, say, let's go have lunch at the fairgrounds today. We'd pull in, go eat in the press box, look at a couple of races, maybe bet a couple of races. All right, time to go back to the station, start putting the 6 and 10 together. Boom. Right there's car, drive right out.
You know, Ken, today, I don't think people realize, but again, growing up, watching sports in New Orleans, every single channel, every single sports show they went through again the race at the fairgrounds. You had the big race of the day, and they went through every race pretty much, right?
Yeah, listen, we had to give the winner of every race, and normally that big race of the day you just mentioned, he would show the stretch run.
Right.
You know, and even if it was a big winner, let's say you got a Secretariat type win, where you got 20, 30, didn't matter. He was going to show that. And look, he didn't do it because they were sponsors. They weren't spending any special money with the station.
People cared.
He did it because people cared. You know, there was a different time because you would give every baseball score.
That's right.
You would give anything that was happening. You had to have a scoreboard show, which, again, we had 3.5 minutes to do a sportscast. And the only time we would get lucky is if it was a slow day or if a news anchor was, you know, tired. And, hey, you want a minute? Yeah, I'll take a minute. Absolutely, I'll take another minute. And you're on the phone with your producer going, pull that tape that we couldn't get in. Let's show that tape. So, yeah, you'd want to do that. So it was special. But that's what they'd give us, about 3.5. And on a good day, 4.5. And of course, on a Saturday or a Sunday, you'd get a bunch more. But during the week, we had 3.5, and we had to squeeze it.
There's been an evolution in terms of sports broadcasting on TV here now. Again, in terms of what now they're covering the Pelican Saints, Tulane LSU. They'll mention the fairgrounds. It's not like it once was. Again.
No, the big difference I find is today, you take the big local story of the day. You're not going to do a national story because with social media, with the access to the internet, everybody knows what the score is. That's not a big deal. You want the local story, and you want to cover that story in depth. But you know, the biggest thing, and I guess I'm going to say it irritates me a little bit, is when I was on the air in the 70s and 80s, and even in the 90s to some extent, you could get coaches, athletes to come do a show every year for the Sugar Bowl. Both head coaches would come to Channel 8 and Buddy would host a television show with the head coaches. I'm talking about you had Bear Bryant and Aaron Parsegian when Notre Dame played Alabama. They would come. We'd get Saints players to come on air with us. They would come, and you didn't have to pay them to do it. And the biggest change today is that's all out the window. The coaches aren't going anywhere. Players have to be paid to go to do that today. And now I'm noticing the evolution that we don't even have coaches shows anymore. So what used to be the Vince Gibson show and the Mac Brown coaches show and the basketball, the Perry Clark show, now you don't have that. You've got a 30-minute show. The coach gets taped a little bit here and a little bit there, and everything else is features because they're all recruiting shows. They're trying to recruit you for next year's portal, for next year's team. So it's all based on attracting people. It's not just the coach talking there, because you can catch the coach talking on X, Twitter, on Facebook, on LinkedIn. They're going to all be there. So it's been an evolution. I can't say I like it, but that's what it is. And you know what? You have to live with it. Like the portal, you have to live with it.
Ken, hang in there for me. New Orleans legendary sportscaster, a media member, Ken Berthelot is our guest today. I'm Eric Asher. We'll hear from our underwriters. We'll come back. We'll continue this great conversation. I would move.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Acadian Custom Shutters is locally owned and operated, specializing in interior and exterior shutters and window coverings, as well as awnings and patio covers. Acadian Custom Shutters offers American products with personal service and workmanship, serving the South Shore, North Shore, and Mississippi Gulf Coast. More information is available at 985-893-3119 or AcadianCustomShutters.com.
Really enjoying today's program. Legendary media member, sportscaster, again, play-by-play voice. Ken Berthelot is our guest. Ken, there's a lot of stories out there about how the Who Dat chant came about. You were involved in all that, doing stories. Talk about it.
Well, sometimes it's good to be at the right place at the right time, even if you're just lucky. In 1982, Buddy had just left Channel 8 to go to Channel 6. Ron Swoboda was hired.
Yes.
Swoboda said, I can't do what the legend Buddy DiLiberto did with this on sports, a 30-minute show before Monday Night Football.
Yes, I
when
remember.
Monday Night Football was the thing back then. Okay, you don't have all this ESPN stuff. And so from 7:30 to 8 o'clock, we did a 30-minute show. So Swoboda said, let's divvy this up. And we had a couple of other sportscasters. They were going to take the college scene. He says, Ken, you're from New Orleans, do the high school scene, and I'll do this. Ron Swoboda would do the Saints. So this day, we were doing a 5-minute piece, 6-minute piece on St. Aug. And we got there a little late. Avis Landry was my photographer at St. Aug graduate. And the coach said, listen, we can get a manager to drive your car. Why don't you just ride with us on a bus so we're not late doing 5 minutes worth of interviews out here. We're on the bus, and the captains for the football team started the cheer, Who Dat say they're going to beat St. Aug, Who Dat. And I looked to the right, and because we're standing by the door on the school bus going out, and Avis said, back then you had big tape recorders you had to turn on. He says, I'm turning it on. I'm rolling, brother. I'm rolling. So he picks up the camera and he starts rolling, and we go back and we get the whole cheer with the whole team doing Who Dat say they're going to beat St. Aug. We come back that night and we put it together. We're doing it on a Friday. Come back and we put it together for the Monday show. And at that time, the phones lit up and people said, we love the cheer. And Swoboda said, man, he says, we got to play this again. I said, yeah, Ron, but Monday Night Football ends at midnight. So by the time we're on, it'll be 12. Maybe we might be on Tuesday morning. He said, yeah, but I'm going to play it at 6 and 10, Tuesday through Friday. Well, that he did. That Sunday in the Dome, suddenly you got Who Dat say they're going to beat them Saints. Well, it takes off. Right place, right time. We're lucky. St. Aug's lucky. Talked to Darren Dixon about that. He says, that wasn't, he says, I was the year after, but I remember the guys talking about it. And he says, I remember it very well. He's now the prefect of discipline, was a quarterback on that next St. Aug team. So, so anyway, it takes off. Swoboda is quick to find out that a guy named Steve Modesier, and I want to say Garcia's first name, I'm going to forget this, they were the record producers, and they said, this is hot. We've got to build this into a song. So they go and get 5 singing Saints, and they write, and they get Aaron Neville to sing it. And they write a little bit of the Saints Go Marching In, and they put the Who Dat cheer in there. And at that time, we were also going live on Monday night from different restaurants or lounges around the city. We're in New Orleans East at that time. And the 5 singing Saints, I got them written down so I don't forget them. So it's Dave Waymer, Brad Edelman, John Hill, Reggie Lewis, Louis Oubre, and now I think there was one more for that night that was singing with them. They're singing on the balcony. Fire marshal's gone nuts. The place is overpacked. Everybody wants to see it. Again, Aaron Neville is there. So the whole thing's taking place and being unveiled. And Swoboda, in his own words, he's up there with them, and he kind of separates himself to the side a little bit. And I said, why'd you do that? He goes, well, I was looking at me, I was looking at them, and he says, I kind of thought I may have been a little rhythmically challenged with that group who was pretty good. Swoboda's great with one-liners, folks, I can tell you. Now, he's one of the best at it. And it took off from there. And it just went viral. And ESPN in 2022 came in to do something. Newspaper, Times-Picayune, chronicled it back for the 40-year anniversary, and they did a nice story on it. But when ESPN came in and we both did the interviews, and they tried to talk to some people at St. Aug. This was during COVID, and no one was available at the time. But Swoboda, I thought, gave the quote of all quotes. He said, look, this was 1982. There were no cell phones. There was no social media. But he says, I'll tell you this. This cheer, this chant went viral long before anybody knew what viral meant.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
And he was right. And by the way, there was some, and ESPN said, what would you say to the other high schools that said they were also using the chant?
Yeah.
And I said, I don't take that away from anybody. There were other high schools
Sure.
using a Who Dat chant. But I said, until the Channel 8 cameras rolled on a team doing it and put that on the public airwaves in
Yes.
New Orleans, Louisiana, in a place where that could only be adopted and made its own by Saints Nation.
Yes.
Until that happened, it didn't go viral for anybody else. So you just got to credit St. Aug and myself and Avis for being at the right place
Right.
in the right time. But it was really Steve Montesfiore, Ron Swoboda, and the Saints organization who
Yeah.
adopted it and said, let's go with it.
Yep.
This is a great thing.
No doubt about it.
Yeah.
And of course, Louis Oubre, a former St. Aug Purple Knight.
Yes.
And of course, again, a New Orleans Saint.
Yes.
Yep, no doubt.
Yes.
All right. Tulane, past, present, and future.
Whew, that's a 2-hour documentary right there. Past, one of the all-time best ever. 1947-48, maybe early 50s, Hollywood makes a movie. Father was a fullback. Fred McMurray is the star. Fred McMurray's coaching a team that was good, and now they're having a down year. And the alumni are getting on in black and white film, okay, before it was colored,
Right.
colorized. And here's Fred McMurray in the movie. You go, if you're going to watch this movie, go in, it's about 90 minutes in, an hour 15 in. They start talking about the big game. They've got to win this game to be legitimate. They've got to win this game. And the opponent is Tulane. Tulane. And they talk about Tulane. And you actually hear the real, the original Tulane fight song, Roll Green Wave, is played in the movie. And Tulane is talked about in the movie. And I think if this is the right movie, it may have been a second movie on this. He tells his daughter at one point, we might not be good this year, but we're gonna build this program back up that we can compete with the Tulanes of the world. Now that's the Tulanes of the early years.
Yeah.
So they were like an Alabama.
They were.
Yeah, they were that good. And then, unfortunately, some president comes along and some board member comes along, and they think that the expenses for college football are getting a little out of hand. Well, they probably were, but everybody else was paying the price, so you got to pay the price to be good. They de-emphasized football with Rufus Harris in the 1950s. And I remember Andy Pilney, the great Notre Dame, Andy Pilney was named head coach after they fired the guy they didn't like, all right? And he comes in and he said, Ken, he said, they gave me a $2,000 recruiting budget. Alabama and LSU was spending $2,000 a month on telephone calls. Now this is the 50s, okay?
Right.
Today, that would be like, and I put this in the computer, that would be like having $25,000 as your recruiting budget in today's world, and everybody else is spending $25,000 a month on their phone calls and whatever they got to make to recruit. So they really tore the program down. Pilney had a heart attack trying to build it back up. He did build it back up for 1 year, eventually gave way to Jim Pittman. Jim Pittman tries to build it up. Tulane gets behind the whole thing, and they have the Year of the Green. It's going to come back in 1970, the Year of the Green.
Yes.
And it did come back.
It did.
So well so that I can remember in 1970, this is my senior year of college.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask a girl from the lower ninth ward out on a date. And she says, now Tulane's an uptown school, so this is the uptown school. We're in the lower ninth ward. She says, only if we're going to the Tulane game, because I'm a member of Bullard's Bandits, and we go see Tulane, and then we can go after that. We can go to any movie anywhere you want to go, but no Tulane game, no date.
No date.
So when Tulane could capture the hearts, I'm telling that story to show you how Tulane uptown captures the hearts of even people in the lower ninth ward. It was there for the making. And then 70, they go 8-4. They didn't beat LSU. It ends up with 73, where they beat LSU for the first time in a quarter century. They give Vinny Ellender the 10-year contract. He has 2 bad years following, and they fire him after that. So, and after that, it slipped, and really from almost there until where we are now, you had maybe 4 seasons of 8 wins, and that was it. So
the undefeated season in 98.
Well, yeah, and actually, if you go to the 8-win thing, 97 was 7-4.
Yeah.
So 7-4, and then 98 was undefeated, and then Willie Fritz comes back with his back-to-backs, 12 and 11, the last 2 years. But what happened in between there? And I hate to say this, but it's just, sometimes you've got the opportunity to make a decision, and it seems like the decisions, whether it was on coaching, whether it was on conferences
Right.
or anything else, wasn't the right one. Tulane didn't make the right one, and they paid the price.
Right. You had a great story about the New Orleans arena, and maybe Tulane again. The thought was that would be a place that they would be playing at one point, right?
You know, and we're talking about the Smoothie King Center,
Yeah, Smoothie
right?
King Center,
yeah.
right.
All right. So I learned something that I didn't know,
Okay.
even all the years that I worked at Tulane, and as well as I knew M.L. Lagarde, and everybody I think knows M.L.
Oh, yeah.
Lagarde, former
Legend.
sports writer, former sports information director, and M.L., according to Kevin White, who was
Right.
a former athletics director, spent a lot of his years working behind the scenes to help the Smoothie King Center be built. And I didn't know that, Eric. And in his mind, he was hoping that one day, knowing that there wasn't a lot of room to do things on the Tulane campus, and even Tulane
Right.
might need what is now Fogelman Arena in Devlin Fieldhouse.
Yes.
They might need that for classroom space because they're a landlocked university. He was hoping that maybe Tulane would have a program that could one day play basketball, or at least some of their basketball games, the big ones, in the Smoothie King Center. And I was kind of hoping that too, but it didn't work out that way.
The evolution of college athletics with the transfer portal, NIL, your thoughts?
If you're not Power 5, then you are a minor league franchise in college athletics, developing coaches and players for Power 5 status.
Is that Tulane right now?
That's Tulane right now. Willie Fritz is the university was trying to give him what he asked for, but it wasn't happening fast enough. And Tulane sometimes, I think coaches are worried. Listen, is it going to stop somewhere along the line, and we can't, or be pushed further down the road, and we can't get what we need to attract the players? Look, today it's NIL money. So you're going to have to pay the players. It's the transfer portal.
Right.
So if you're not Power 5, sometimes it's more than just NIL money. It's players wanting to play before packed stadiums, before the 50, 60, 70,000s. And I think Tulane's got options. Whether or not they take the options, I think they're on the precipice right now of having to make a decision. Do we want to be a group of 5, or do we want to be a Power 5? And I think, and I'm hoping, that they take the Power 5 option. You have the Big 12, who has always had an interest. Even when they were the Southwest Conference, they had an interest in Tulane.
Right.
Always liked Tulane. And probably a better fit for Tulane would be to do what Georgia Tech did. If you got to withdraw from the Southeastern Conference, try to get into the ACC. It fits academically, but here's the big thing. It fits where their fan base is. Tulane's big fan base, New York, a little bit up and down the East Coast, a lot in Florida, and the, all down the Florida, especially the East Coast of Florida, and you got some in California. Well, with the addition of Cal and Stanford, you've got Miami, you've got, again, your New York and your big Northeast powers in that ACC. That would be, I think, the ideal. But you have to move quickly because there's not a lot of spots left. I agree. Eric, if they go to 4 20-team conferences, okay? So you'd have a Power 4, and you'd have 80 schools. Well, you're not going back in the SEC or the Big Ten. So that leaves the Big 12. Right now they have 16. Word is, and I like my sources on this a lot, that Memphis and San Antonio are probably going to be added. So that would give them 18. That would leave you with 2 more. Okay? Then the ACC has 16. I might be wrong on this, and it's 17 if Notre Dame ever moved football into the conference. And you say, well, Notre Dame will never do that. Maybe. With the new playoff structure, if you're not in a conference, you're not going to get the bye. So does Notre Dame want to stay with the NBC money? They might. They might go, hey, we'll take the extra game. Doesn't matter. But if with the addition of Cal and Stanford, if Notre Dame was to ever get into the ACC, SMU is in the ACC. Rice has made a gigantic money donation, or money, I'm looking for the word here, investment, thank you, to get their program up, because with their academics, they're looking ACC. So I think that would be a great move for Tulane, but the administration has to decide that's the way they want to go.
I would agree. Let's talk some LSU. Your thought, so many great stories, from Skip Bertman to Dale Brown to, again, the LSU football team. Take it from here. Your
in
thoughts,
which way?
Your thoughts on just some moments that you remember, some things that have really stuck out. Obviously, again, you've seen now 3 Heisman Trophy winners. You've seen 3 national championships in football. Again, Dale Brown, what he did in basketball, and of course,
my only disappointment for Dale is that he didn't win. You wanted him to win one national championship.
Yes.
You wanted him to get that one.
Right.
But look, LSU is committed to being the best of the best, because there is Power 5,
right,
and then there's that very elite status in the Power 5, those 4 or 5 schools that are the best in every conference, and they're definitely committed to doing that, and I think it's showing up with what they're doing right now. Now you have to scratch your head a little bit on Brian Kelly. I love him as a coach. I loved him at Notre Dame. I was a little disappointed at the way he started in his first 2 years, from the standpoint that, the Florida State just happens to have LSU's number, right, for whatever reason. You remember back in the 1990s when Bobby Bowden was going to play 5 straight in Baton Rouge? Yeah. And I can't remember if I know he won the first 2. I can't remember if it's 2 or 3, and they bought him out of the last 2 or 3 and said, that's it. Yeah. And then this Florida State comes in and catches them twice too. But Brian Kelly has got to step it up, because look, without Jaden Daniels, this was a 5-loss LSU team this year. And he doesn't have that coming in at quarterback. And remember, it took him 1 year to develop Jaden Daniels. So LSU's, I think, football-wise, Brian Kelly said, I've got a plan, and my plan works. Right. I believe him, but I think this is his year that we have to see that plan work, and that LSU has to be right in the thick of everything, right, as far as those. And look, it's going to be a little different now, because with the 12-team playoff, whole lot different than counting on a committee. So you're going to have 2, sometimes 3 teams possibly from a conference into the playoffs. And by the way, which groups are going to get hurt the most on that, even with a 12-team playoff? Group of 5. Right. You may get 2, but you're always going up against 4 and 5 if you do. So
Skip Bertman's time at LSU.
Skip Bertman was fantastic. Skip Bertman realized that he could take what was done in minor league baseball to draw a crowd and create excitement, and take it to the college level. So if you ever covered minor league baseball, and I didn't cover it when I was here, and I didn't really understand it when I was here because I was young, but in Alexandria I did. Okay. We had a minor league baseball team called the Alexandria Aces of the San Diego Padres, and on that team, even though they weren't big names yet, Mike Ivey was behind the plate, and Bill Allman was at shortstop. Randy Jones was the ace on that staff, and the center fielder was Dave Winfield. Right. And the 2 guys, and I wish I could remember their names right now, I'd have to go back and look in my files, they ran that like a place you wanted to be. I mean, they had hostesses that would come, and if you didn't want to get up to buy popcorn, they'd get it for you. They'd bring you Coke to you. And those guys did everything. And they had all the crazy stuff between innings and those kind of things that would go on nationally. Yes. They did it, and they filled, they got a lot of people to Bringhurst Field in Alexandria to watch those guys play. And when Skip Bertman took over LSU, he could see some of that going on with Ron Frazier at Miami. And when he took over at LSU, he said, we can do this here. Right. So he did that to bring people in. He created all the excitement for fans to want to come. And then the last thing he did was he got the media. Right. You got to get the media involved. And he got the media. He started Tiger Vision with Ronnie Rance. Yeah, Tommy Chrysan was part of that at times, and so were some other people, Len Rollins, a couple of other people. And he said, we've got to have 2 things. We've got to have every game on the air, which they got on WWL. Right. And he said, we have got to have as many home games broadcast and any away games broadcast that we can do. And Tiger Vision brought that. And once they started bringing it in, and the guys understood and did a great job broadcasting baseball, making it appealing, everything took off. Yeah. It was amazing.
Incredible.
There's a side story to that.
Go ahead.
You got time?
Yeah, I got about 2 minutes. I got a minute and a half.
This is real quick. Rick Jones came to me at Tulane, and he said, they're doing it the right way up there. It's not the way college baseball has been done anywhere else, but Ken, we got to keep up with them. We got to go toe to toe with them. And he said, can you find me a game a station that'll broadcast all my games. And we were sharing WWL, so there wasn't another station that could do that because you play at the same time.
Yes.
So we found 88.3, and they are still broadcasting Tulane baseball
RBH.
and RBH and women's basketball today. So we got that, and we got him a television coaches show, and we tried to do some games on TV that couldn't do as many as Tiger Vision was doing because they didn't have the same budget, but we raised some money and we got it done. And Rick forever today is appreciative. He said, you helped Tulane stay toe-to-toe with LSU. And remember, he didn't have the scholarships.
That's right.
He didn't have the scholarships. Tuition was a big part.
Yes.
He had to count on legislative scholarships to help fill the gaps.
Yeah, that's no doubt.
Interesting story.
Yeah, it is.
And UNO was doing, Ron Maestri doing it over
He
there
was the
along with
godfather
Tommy
here.
Schwanner.
Right.
Yeah. So Tommy Schwanner, Ron Maestri, they were doing it over there.
Yeah.
Boy, this was a great baseball
It really was. It really, no doubt about it. This has been one of the highlights of my career. Thank you so much for giving me your time today. Again, so much appreciated. I've always been such a big fan of yours. Ken Berthelot, thank you for joining us on the program today.
Thank you for having me. This was my pleasure, and I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ken Berthelot, one of the legends in our business here in New Orleans. All right, thanks so much for tuning in. Happy New Year to each and every one of you. Wishing you the best in 2024. Remember, there's so many ways to catch our program now. You can go to WLAE-TV's YouTube page. Also, again, you can also, go to ericasher.com. And also, again, we remind everybody you can catch me on the radio. That's 106.1. That's weekdays 4 to 6. You can listen live at ericasher.com. Also, again, the iHeartRadio app, the TuneIn Radio app. Anchor Spotify is where you can find our podcast. Search Inside New Orleans Show with Eric Asher. And, of course, we want to thank our underwriters for making our show possible. Each and every one of those underwriters. Please support those underwriters. And, of course, the great staff here that does a fantastic job producing our program here at WLE. Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Logan Graffia, Alex Chacon, and our director, William Hill. For the legend, Ken Berthelot, I'm Eric Asher. Thanks so much for tuning in. Happy New Year. We'll see you next year for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.
You're watching WLAE, New Orleans Public Television.